Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine at the home of one of the leading Pharisees, and the people there were observing him carefully. He told a parable to those who had been invited, noticing how they were choosing the places of honor at the table. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not recline at table in the place of honor. A more distinguished guest than you may have been invited by him. And the host who invited both of you may approach you and say, "Give your place to this man." And then you proceed with embarrassment to take the lowest place. Rather, when you are invited, go and take the lowest place, so that when the host comes to you, he may say, "My friend, move up to a higher position." Then you enjoy the esteem of your companions at the table. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. And he said to the host who invited him, "When you hold a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or sisters or relatives or your wealthy neighbors, in case they may invite you back and you have repayment. Rather, when you hold a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Blessed indeed you will be because of their inability to repay you. For you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Whenever you have a graduation, like I went to one recently, a high school graduation, and the mother and grandmother were there, and the father and grandfather were there also, and they were so proud of their child. He was graduating after 12 years of going to school. He had been a handicapped, and he was in special education class, and yet he struggled through, and he graduated, and they were so proud of him as he got his diploma and walked off the stage. Yes, their pride was based on someone else, the child, the teenager rather. Yes, it was others-centered. But the pride we're talking about today is very self-centered. We see the Pharisees and Sadducees at the banquet, they're very egotistical and self-centered. It's like people say, "Look at my car, look at my house, look at the clothes I wear, look at the shoes I wear. Look how much money I have in the bank. Look at the vacations I go on and on and on." Yes, it's a very self-centered attitude when it comes to pride. Yet, being very proud is not very satisfying. Yes, no matter how many possessions you have, you want more. Pride drives you to get bigger and bigger and better things. Pride drives you to frustration. Do you know anybody who's proud, besides the one you're looking at right now? Do you know anybody who's really proud in your life? A very proud individual at work, at home, maybe in your family. Yes, you look at that person and you say, is that person happy? Is that person at peace? Humility, on the other hand, is the center of peace, because one does not fear failure, and one does not fear the success of other people. Yes, here you have a proud person who goes ballistic over someone else's nicer house, a bigger car, a nicer clothing, or whatever it may be. Yes, that proud person isn't very happy. On the other hand, a humble person is not entangled in jealousy. Pride and jealousy kind of go together. You know, you don't have to teach me to be proud, and you don't have to teach me to be jealous. Yes, those are ingrained in us through original sin. Yes, the competition is there and very competitive. But when somebody was humble, it's completely different. Yes, success of others isn't on their mind, and they don't worry about failure. Because the only time you fail is when you don't try. Yes, their mind is clear. It isn't about me, myself, and I. Yes, you often hear a person very depressed. Why? Because they didn't come first. They didn't make the basketball team. They didn't become on the cheerleaders team. Or UConn didn't become first. Or UConn lost last Saturday at football. Oh, it was terrible at the failure. Because the only way we want to be proud of of the Yankees, proud of the Red Sox, proud. Yes, when we look at number one, then we find pride. Yes, somebody who is number two can't handle it. They can't handle it and they're depressed, even though they're two. Number two, they can't handle it. But a humble is on the other side. They see clearly, or very clearly, the idea of humility. We hear, when is a person, when do we encounter humiliation? A lot of different ways. Remember, Jesus said, he who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself shall be exalted. There's a lot of difference between humiliation and humility. There are a lot of different situations in which I am humiliated. But the things that come out of your mouth, you can't put it back in. And sometimes you're very embarrassed and humiliated at what you said. It was the wrong thing to say to the right person. And you can't take back what you say. And that it's very humiliating, sometimes comes out of your own mouth. I know it comes out of mine. And I'm humiliated many times with the wrong thing that I say. But humiliation also comes from the outside. You're humiliated at work. Someone else gets the job that you deserve. You're humiliated by someone's talking to you and talks you down and puts you down. Or a situation in your own life. There are a lot of times where we find ourselves being humiliated. But pride and humiliation are not very satisfying. But pride and humiliation often come together. But when it comes to humility, it's a lot different. Jesus says, he who is first will be last. Jesus says, I came to lose my life so that I could find it. Many times in the scriptures we find different beautiful phrases of humiliation. It's very easy to be proud. It's very easy to be jealous. But it's very hard to be humble. And you know, you have extra people walk by, probably 100 people walk by the church during the week and nobody stops into the church because they don't believe in the real presence of Christ. But they want that exercise. I see people, I come over to church at 6:45 in the morning, I see people walking up and down the street. I may take a walk at night, 8 o'clock, and people are walking up and down the street. They're all exercising. They want to be in good shape. Unless you go exercise, you're not going to be in good shape. So unless you have exercise, take exercises, different types of exercise of humility, you're going to be imprisoned by pride. Now, there are all types of exercises of humility. To me, one of the most satisfying exercises for me, last couple of months, I've been going to confession. I go up to the Holy Family Monastery. And I go to Father Ron. I go to the same priest if he's there. So, an exercise, to me, an exercise for humility is going to confession. It takes a lot of humility to sit down and tell God, I'm sorry for my sins. But what prevents most people from going to confession? Well, first of all, they don't believe it. And because under that non-belief is pride. That exercise is very rarely exhibited and tried in most Catholics' life. But that's a wonderful exercise for humility. That's if you want the virtue of humility. You got to work for it. Another way of exercising for humility is to apologize to someone. He who exalts himself will be humbled. He who humbles himself shall be exalted. Okay, they were wrong, but you say, I'm sorry, in your family, to keep peace. Or you have an argument with your girlfriend in high school, and she was wrong, and you say, I'm sorry. Yes, to express sorrow, either for your own action or for the action of another person, brings peace to that relationship. And that exercise of saying, I'm sorry, is a tremendous, tremendous strength for the virtue of humility. He who humbles himself will be exalted. Yes, we look at those situations, or we look at the fact of you giving up your will for someone else. Yes, how many times a mother or father gives up her will for her children? And when you say, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, he who loses his life will find it, and who finds his life will lose it. But when we lose our life in God's will, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. But God wanted you to be here today. It takes a lot of humility to come to church. Yes, when we look at those signs of humility, another one that's very, very important is that humility of prayer. I really need to be united with Christ. And we have that today. This is just off the cuff here. I went to 2 weddings recently, one in Stonington and one in Torrington. I'd marry anybody east of the Mississippi River. And I went there, all of them were sitting there with their cell phones. The wife is across the table, and he's on his cell phone. Or the husband's across the set, and they're on his cell phone. And now they have that sickness, we call that mobophobia, where you're addicted to the phone, you can't go anywhere without it. Try leaving the phone when you come to church and go back and get it. Yes, I was so disappointed that everybody had a cell phone, and they're all using it. And they took pictures of the bride. It was by Justice of Peace, because both of them were married twice, but they're friends of my family, so I went out there and gave a blessing. I couldn't go to the JP gave a talk. She didn't even talk about God. It really saw that when you kick out God out of marriage. So I was looking at this, and I felt so sorry that there wasn't any silence with each other. I got them all to get up and renew their marriage vows. But one of the real tragedies today, because of our busyness, because of the cell phones, we don't have time to be by ourselves, and we don't have time to be with God. And the one exercise of humility is to take time out for God. Not for the cell phone, not for the TV, not for the internet, but to take time out for God. To realize that you really, really depend on God. Without God, you can't really exist. But today, as we humbly ask God, in a very special way during this time of tragic decision, where our president and our congresspeople are going to have to decide we're going to bomb Syria. After they've lost 100,000 people, 2 million people are now refugees. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands are injured. Kids aren't going to school. And as we look, and we humbly ask the Holy Spirit to guide our country. We saw we lost Vietnam. And now Iraq is in civil war. And Afghanistan is in shambles. And now we're going to another area. We humbly ask the Lord and the Holy Spirit to guide our leaders in the way of Christ, in the way of peace. Yes, when we look at humility, it's really not a normal virtue in our life, neither in our country nor within our souls. But if we're going to have peace, and not fear of our own failures, and not fear the success of others, then we're going to have peace. God said, he who exalts himself will be humbled. He who humbles himself will be exalted. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. The Pharisees were first, they became last. And the poorest that were last became first. Do you really want the virtue of humility? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen.